Welcome to another episode of Living Fire. Subscribe now so you never miss out on any of our latest uploads. So let's get into the video. Inflation is good when it is light. There are two cases where this happens. The first is when inflation expects consumers to raise prices. When prices are rising, people want to buy now instead of paying more later, and this increases demand in the short term. So as a result, stores sell more and the factories produce more. They are more likely to hire new workers to meet demand, boosting economic growth. The second is when it removes the risk of overheating the economy and lowers the possibility of a bubble that, when popped, can cause a depression. This reduces demand, prices fall, and businesses reduce their inventory. So as a result, workers have less money to spend, which makes demand even lower, forcing people to tighten their belts. This, in turn, usually leads to a sell-off of investments from those who have overextended themselves during the low inflationary times, and can lead to a good buying opportunity for the keen investors among us. Demand pushing and pulling. Demand pull is when the demand for an item is more than the supply for that item, whereas cost push inflation is when the demand is the same but there's a fall in the production of that item. Either way, resulting in the increase of prices, and when applied across the entire economy, this means inflation. How the Fed keeps inflation healthy. The Federal Reserve has set an official inflation target of 2%. On August 27, 2020, the FOMC announced that it would allow a target inflation rate of more than 2% if it would help ensure maximum employment. It is still looking for 2% inflation over time, but is willing to allow higher rates if inflation has been low for a while. This is for basic inflation. It eliminates volatile gas and food prices. This is also a year-to-year rate, not a month-to-month rate. Former Fed Chairman Ben Brennan was the first U.S. Fed chair to set an inflation target. The inflation target increases demand by setting people's expectations of inflation, so he believes the Fed will ensure that prices continue to rise. And this encourages them to buy now before prices rise further. The country's central bank adjusts interest rates to keep inflation close to 2%. If inflation does not reach its target, the Fed will cut interest rates to boost lending. If inflation exceeds the Fed's target, the Fed will raise interest rates. The target of inflation has become an important component of monetary policy. When inflation is bad. When is inflation bad? If inflation is greater than 2%, it becomes dangerous. Walking inflation is when prices rise between 3% to 10% in a year. It can drive too much economic growth, because at that level, inflation robs you of your hard-earned dollars. The prices of things you buy every day rise faster than wages. Thanks to walking inflation, it takes $24 today to buy what $1 did in 1913. Galloping inflation occurred during the 1980s. It prompted President Ronald Reagan to famously say, "Inflation is as violent as a mugger, as frightening as an armed robber, and as deadly as a hitman." It took double-digit interest rates and a recession to stop galloping inflation. Thankfully, it hasn't returned since then. The two worst types of inflation are hyperinflation and stagflation. Hyperinflation is when rapid, excessive, and out-of-control price increases across the economy, either on a monthly, weekly, or even daily basis occur. Think 1920s Germany or Venezuela and Turkey today. Stagflation, on the other hand, is as bad and often harder to get rid of, being that it's caused by an increase in unemployment, with prices staying high. Inflation, bubble. Deflation, demise. The housing industry provides an example of both inflation and deflation. Until 2006, gradually rising prices attracted investors. They saw there was a chance to make money by buying now and selling later. This created more jobs as home builders tried to meet demand. Between 2006 and 2010, the housing market experienced massive deflation. Prices fell by 30%. Those who could afford to buy a house decided to wait until the market improved. The longer they waited, the lower prices dropped. Many people were trapped in their homes, not being able to sell their properties for enough to cover the mortgages they'd gotten during the peak. And eventually, they could not see any light at the end of the tunnel. Even those who could afford to keep paying often just walked away, and this sent prices even lower. This happened to so many people that there was a glut on the market. Homes that were left behind were called shadow inventory. And it took until 2001 for the economy to recover, and until 2013 for these homes to be absorbed back into the market. How do you hedge against inflation? Investors have many strategies for hedging against inflation, but none of them offer guaranteed protection. One of the most effective methods for fighting inflation is through Treasury inflation-protected securities, or TIPS, and Series 1 bonds. These products are insured by the federal government, making them among the safest investments on the market, and they adjust payments periodically to account for inflation. No one likes paying more for stuff. That's why inflation, especially the sharp price increases we've seen in recent months, feels like a dirty word. But on the whole, inflation can actually be a good thing for many working-class Americans, especially those with fixed-rate debt like a 30-year mortgage. And it's because wages are going up. In the case of a mortgage, your monthly payment will be the same, not to mention, your house will increase in value. Almost a polar opposite to this is that bank shares themselves are commonly believed to be inflation-resistant due to their ability to increase rates outside of their fixed agreements. Who knew you could have your bank and eat it too? Warren Buffett, back in 2015, during the annual Berkshire Hathaway shareholder meeting, stated, "The best businesses during inflation are the ones that you buy once and then you don't have to keep making capital investments subsequently," Buffett said, adding that any business with heavy capital tends to be a poor business to be in inflation, and often it's a poor business to be in generally. When asked what companies were best poised to thrive during a period of high inflation, inflation's losers. Not all debt shrinks with inflation, of course. Credit card interest rates, which largely aren't fixed, have shot up this year to an average of 17.13%, just under the all-time record high of 17.14% that was reached in 2019, according to the Federal Reserve. And anyone living on a fixed income, such as retirees, who aren't benefiting from wage increases that people in the labor force are seeing, are feeling extra pain as prices go up. We just don't know which end is up. There's a sticky psychological side to inflation, however, that makes it hard to clearly define winners and losers, because even though wages are rising and job growth is strong, Americans are bummed about the state of the economy. The Consumer Sentiment Index fell to a decade low in early November, according to data collected by the University of Michigan. The November fallout has inflation's name written all over it, said economists at Wells Fargo in a recent note. 1 in 4 people surveyed said inflation has worsened their living standards, and half said they expect inflation to wipe out whatever wage gains they were given over the past year. And with that, we've reached the end of this video, all about how inflation can be good for you. If you enjoyed this episode and you found it helpful, don't forget to give us a thumbs up and to subscribe to the channel for more content just like this. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.